I spent the first 29 years of my life pretending to be someone I wasn't. By the time I finally came out, I thought I had already missed my chance at real love. Then, at 65, a confident 23-year-old man walked into my life, and everyone assumed he only wanted one thing. They couldn't have been more wrong. I was 29 years old when I finally admitted the truth I'd spent my entire life trying to hide. For years, I smiled when people expected me to smile, dated women because it was what everyone around me thought I should do, and convinced myself that if I ignored my heart long enough, maybe it would eventually change. It never did. The day I came out wasn't dramatic. There wasn't a big speech or a crowd of people cheering me on. It was just me, sitting across from my closest friend in a quiet cafe, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee. "I think I'm gay," I whispered. Instead of looking shocked, he smiled gently. "I've known for years," he said. Those 5 words changed my life. Coming out gave me freedom, but it also came with a price. Some family members stopped calling. A few lifelong friends quietly disappeared. At work, people treated me differently, even when they tried to hide it. Still, for the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending anymore. Throughout my 30s and 40s, I dated a few wonderful men. Some relationships lasted months. One lasted nearly 6 years. I truly believed we'd spend the rest of our lives together. We didn't. Life has a funny way of reminding you that love isn't guaranteed, no matter how deeply you feel it. When that relationship ended, I threw myself into work, traveled whenever I could, and built a peaceful little life. I learned to enjoy my own company. I adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, started reading more novels than I could count, and discovered that quiet evenings weren't nearly as lonely as they once felt. The years passed faster than I expected. Before I knew it, I was celebrating my 65th birthday. Friends joked that I looked younger than my age. I laughed along with them, but deep down I believed my romantic life was behind me. Dating apps made me feel invisible. Most profiles were looking for someone under 40. Some even wrote things like, "No older guys, please." After seeing those words enough times, you begin to believe them. I stopped looking. Instead, I focused on enjoying whatever years I had left. Morning walks with Charlie became my favorite part of every day. I volunteered twice a week at the local community library, helping organize book donations and chatting with regular visitors. Books had always been honest. People, not always. One rainy Saturday morning, I was stacking donated novels onto a cart when one slipped from the top and landed on the floor. Before I could bend down to pick it up, another hand reached for it. "Looks like we had the same idea," a warm voice said with a laugh. I looked up. Standing in front of me was a young man with kind hazel eyes, messy brown hair damp from the rain, and an easy smile that somehow made the gloomy afternoon feel brighter. He couldn't have been more than 23. He handed me the book. "You dropped this." "Thank you," I replied with a smile. "I'm Ethan." I introduced myself, expecting the conversation to end there. Instead, he glanced at the overflowing donation cart and asked, "Need an extra pair of hands?" I laughed softly. "You know this is volunteer work, right? There's no paycheck." He grinned. I wasn't asking for one. Something about his sincerity caught me off guard. At the time, I had no idea that the young man standing in front of me would completely change the way I looked at love, aging, and the future I thought had already been written. The next Wednesday, Ethan came back. I recognized him the moment he walked through the library doors, this time wearing a navy hoodie and carrying 2 paper bags filled with books. "I figured I'd actually donate something instead of just borrowing your volunteers," he joked. I couldn't help laughing. That's a much better trade. From that day on, he became a regular. Sometimes he dropped by to donate books. Sometimes he stayed to help organize the shelves. Other times he simply wandered through the aisles before finding me and asking, coffee after your shift? It slowly became our routine. We'd sit at the little cafe across the street, talking for hours about everything from old movies to travel dreams, childhood memories, and the books that had changed our lives. What surprised me most wasn't our age difference. It was how easy conversation felt. There were no awkward silences. No pretending to be someone I wasn't. Ethan listened with genuine curiosity whenever I shared stories from my past, and in return, he told me about his own life. He had recently finished college and worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing company. He loved photography, hated cooking, and admitted he'd gotten lost 3 different times while trying to find the library on his first visit. I still have no sense of direction, he confessed one afternoon. I noticed, I teased. He laughed so hard that people at nearby tables looked over. Weeks turned into months. Before I realized it, Wednesdays weren't my favorite day because of volunteering anymore. They were my favorite because I knew I'd see Ethan. Still, I constantly reminded myself of one thing. He's 23. You're 65. Don't read too much into his kindness. Whenever that little voice in my head became too loud, I created distance. If Ethan invited me to dinner, I'd politely decline. If he suggested seeing a movie, I'd tell him I already had plans, even when I didn't. I convinced myself it was the responsible thing to do. One afternoon, after I'd turned down another invitation, Ethan looked unusually quiet. Did I do something wrong? He asked. The question caught me off guard. No. Of course not. Then why does it feel like every time we get closer, you take 2 steps back? I looked down at my coffee, unable to meet his eyes. You deserve friends your own age. He smiled sadly. Who decided that? I did. He leaned forward. You know what I see? I stayed silent. I see someone who's funny, thoughtful, patient, and genuinely cares about people. I don't see a number. His words lingered in my mind long after we said goodbye. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to wonder if I had been the one building walls that didn't need to exist. A few days later, Ethan invited me to a small photography exhibition featuring his work. I'd really like you to come, he said. Against my better judgment. I said yes. What I didn't know was that someone at that exhibition was about to mistake our relationship, spread a hurtful rumor, and force both of us to confront feelings neither of us had been brave enough to admit. The photography exhibition was held in a renovated warehouse downtown, its white walls covered with landscapes, portraits, and candid moments Ethan had captured over the past few years. The room buzzed with conversation as people admired his work. The moment Ethan saw me walk in, his face lit up. You actually came. I said I would. I'm glad you did. He introduced me to his coworkers, a few college friends, and his parents through a video call they had set up after they couldn't attend in person. Everyone was warm and welcoming. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the oldest person in the room. I simply felt included. One photograph caught my attention more than any other. It showed an elderly man sitting alone on a park bench, smiling as sunlight filtered through the trees. The light on his face is incredible, I said. Ethan smiled. That's my favorite photo. Why? Because happiness doesn't disappear with age. Most people just stop looking for it. His answer stayed with me. As the evening continued, I excused myself to get a glass of water. While walking down a quiet hallway, I overheard 2 strangers talking. Isn't that the older guy Ethan keeps hanging around? Yeah. I don't get it. He could date anyone his own age. Maybe Ethan's after money. They laughed. I froze. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I had spent decades proving to myself that I deserved love. In a single careless conversation, every old insecurity came rushing back. I left the exhibition without saying goodbye. Halfway home, my phone began vibrating. Ethan. I couldn't answer. He called again. And again. Finally, I switched my phone off. The next morning, there was a gentle knock at my front door. When I opened it, Ethan stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. You disappeared. I'm sorry. No, he said softly. You're hurt. I looked away. You deserve someone closer to your age. He frowned. Why are you saying that? Because it's true. It isn't. I took a deep breath. I heard people talking last night. His expression changed instantly. What did they say? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. They think you're only interested in me because of my money. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he quietly set both coffee cups on the porch. Do you believe them? The question caught me completely off guard. No. Then why are you pushing me away because of what strangers believe? I couldn't answer. Instead, I whispered the fear that had haunted me for months. I'm afraid one day you'll wake up and realize you sacrificed your youth for someone who's already lived most of his life. Ethan stepped closer. I've never asked you to be younger. Tears blurred my vision. But I can't stop thinking about the future. He nodded slowly. I think about the future too. You do? Every day. Hope flickered inside me. Then he continued. I think about road trips we haven't taken. Books we haven't argued about. Holidays we haven't celebrated. Birthdays we haven't shared. His voice trembled. I don't know how many years we'll get. No one does. Exactly, he said. A 30-year-old isn't promised tomorrow. Neither is a 65-year-old. Silence filled the space between us. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a framed photograph. It was the picture from the exhibition, the elderly man smiling on the park bench. Only now I noticed something I had missed before. In the corner of the frame, almost hidden, was another person sitting beside him. The image had been cropped at the exhibition. This is the original, Ethan said. The man wasn't alone. No. My grandfather was sitting next to him. I looked at the photograph more closely. They were together for 38 years, Ethan continued quietly. People judged them because of their age difference too. I stared at him. My grandfather always told me something. What was it? Find someone who makes ordinary days feel extraordinary. Ignore everyone else. A tear rolled down my cheek. Ethan gently took my hand. I wasn't looking for someone 23 or 65. He smiled through watery eyes. I was looking for you. For the first time since leaving the exhibition, I stopped listening to strangers. And started listening to my own heart. After that morning on my front porch, something inside me finally changed. For months, I had been measuring our relationship by numbers. 23. 65. 42 years between us. But Ethan had never measured us that way. He measured us by laughter shared over coffee, quiet walks through the park, late-night phone calls, and the peace we found simply sitting beside each other without saying a word. So I made a promise to myself. I would stop letting other people's opinions decide whether I deserved to be happy. The weeks that followed felt lighter than they had in years. We visited little towns neither of us had ever seen, spent weekends exploring bookstores, and took Charlie on long walks along the beach. Ethan never rushed ahead. He matched my pace, and somehow I found myself walking a little faster each time. One Saturday afternoon, we returned to the library where we had first met. The volunteers greeted us with warm smiles. Looks like your favorite helper is back, one of them teased. Ethan laughed. I never really left. We spent the afternoon shelving books together, just as we had on the day our story began. As the library was closing, Ethan disappeared for a few minutes. When he came back, he was holding the same novel that had slipped from my hands the day we met. "You remember this?" he asked. I could never forget. He opened the front cover. Inside was a handwritten note. "The best stories begin with unexpected chapters. Thank you for becoming my favorite one." I looked up at him, speechless. "I know life doesn't come with guarantees," Ethan said quietly. "We can't promise each other 50 years. I nodded. "But we can promise to make the years we do have count." Without thinking, I stepped closer. Right there between the bookshelves, I gently cupped his face. "I spent the first 29 years of my life hiding who I was," I whispered. "I'm not going to spend the rest of it hiding how much I love you." Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with tears. He leaned in, and we shared a soft, heartfelt kiss. When we pulled apart, the room was completely silent. I turned, slightly embarrassed, only to see the librarian smiling. "So," she said with a grin, "does this mean I should stop pretending you two are just friends?" Everyone laughed. Even I couldn't stop laughing. Months later, Ethan convinced me to take my first photography class. I thought I was too old to learn something new, I admitted. He handed me the camera. "You're not too old. You're just getting another beginning." That simple sentence stayed with me. 1 year after we met, Ethan organized a small photo exhibition. This time, the final photograph hanging on the wall wasn't of a lonely man on a park bench. It was a picture of the two of us walking Charlie along the beach at sunset, both of us laughing at something neither of us could remember anymore. The caption underneath read, "Love doesn't count birthdays. It counts moments." People stopped to admire the photograph. Some smiled. Some wiped away tears. A few even shared their own stories of finding love later in life. That's when I realized something beautiful. Our relationship wasn't changing everyone's opinion. It was giving a few people the courage to believe that happiness doesn't have an expiration date. Today, I'm still 65. Ethan is still 23. People still stare sometimes. The difference is, neither of us cares anymore. Because every morning, the first thing I see is the man who reminds me that it's never too late to start living honestly. People often tell Ethan, "You keep him young." He always laughs before answering. "No," he says, reaching for my hand. "We keep each other alive." And after everything life had taught me, I finally understood the greatest lesson of all. Love isn't about finding someone your age. It's about finding someone who feels like home. Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe age should matter if two consenting adults truly love, respect, and support each other? Share your thoughts in the comments, we read every one. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe for more emotional LGBTQ+ love stories with unforgettable characters, surprising twists, and happy endings every day. And don't miss the next story, because sometimes, the most unexpected love stories are the ones that stay with us forever.